The Bible is by far the book most widely distributed and translated into most languages, and as such, one must ask the question, does the language it is translated in affect the way it is viewed? Does the Bible translated in another language communicate the identical meaning, thoughts, and ideas presented in the original text, or does language in and of itself affect thought? Translations of the Bible from its original Greek text have forever caused debates over accuracy and correct meaning. In English alone, there are over 50 modern translations of the Bible, plus numerous early English versions. The multiple translations of the Bible in a single language is testimony to the different meanings the English versions hold. One of the biggest problems translators face is that contextually, a translated phrase in one language may have a completely different meaning than the phrase it was translated from, and it is not without paraphrasing, or in some cases a complete restructure, that the same meaning can be conveyed. For example, Matthew 16:18 in the King James Version reads, "And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." An English reader might read through this and come to the conclusion that Jesus is telling Peter that whatever this rock is, that the church will be built upon, is strong enough that hell, the place where unbelievers go, cannot defeat it. When in all reality, the original Greek text for the word hell is Hades, which is the waiting place souls go when they die. In Latin, words Peter and rock are translated to mean the same thing, and the passage is interpreted to mean that upon Peter the church will be built, and against Peter the gates of hell will not prevail. Another example is the very popular passage from 1 Timothy 6:10, "For the love of money is the root of all evil," which is a fairly accurate translation from the Greek given what was available to work with. The actual line is "Rizik gar panton, ton kakon estain he phalegra." Phalegra, which can be taken to mean the love of money, can also be translated to mean covetousness, and kakon is actually a word that means wicked acts. A truer statement of the idea this passage is trying to carry across might be that living a life that is focused on material things leads to carrying out wicked acts. The act of coveting a material possession will lead to an act of wickedness. The natural end action of coveting will be an action of wickedness. The reason for this difference is not due to the fault of the translator, but to the difference in the way the two languages work. It is an impossible translation to make unless the translator has done a paraphrasing or had written a completely different sentence to carry across the same idea in a different way. This phenomenon is an example of what is called sphere-worth hypothesis, the idea that there is a relationship between language a person speaks and how that person understands the world. In the case of this Timothy passage, the same passage translated as best possible carries a different idea directly dependent on the language. The implications of sphere-worth hypothesis play a big part in how Christians study the scriptures. For unless the passages are dealt with in light of the differences between the language translated to and the language of the ancient manuscripts, many of the ideas would be completely skewed. 1 Corinthians 7:1 King James Version says, "It is good for a man not to touch a woman," which is about as perfect a translation as you can get from the original text. The problem is that the Greek language of the time meant the word touch in a very different way. Touchment, attachment, or affiliated contact is that which would appear between married couples. The verse was calling men not to behave towards women in a way that only those in a married relationship should behave. If an English-speaking Christian were to take that passage literally, just as it is presented in the verse, they would conclude that they were not supposed to touch a woman. It is for this very reason that Bible scholars study the original Greek text alongside the translated English versions in order to come to a true understanding of what the scriptures is saying. Even Christians who do not know Greek will incorporate a Greek lexicon into their studies in order to better understand passages that do not make sense in English. In 1993, Eugene Peterson released The Message as a paraphrasing of the original Bible text in the hopes to carry across the same ideas, concepts, and events, all the while bypassing the problems and difficulties of making a direct translation. Take this passage from Romans 10, for instance. In the King James Version it reads, "For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. For Moses describeth the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which doeth those things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise, Say not in thine heart, Who shall ascend into heaven? or who shall descend into the deep? But what saith it? The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart, that the word is of faith, which we preach. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth the confession is made unto salvation. In the Message it reads, the early revelation was intended simply to get us ready for the Messiah, who then puts everyone right before those who trust him to do it. Moses wrote that anyone who insists on using the law code to live right before God soon discovers it is not so easy. Every detail of life regulated by fine print. But trusting God to shape the right living into us is a different story. No precarious climb up to heaven to recruit the Messiah. No dangerous descent into hell to rescue the Messiah. So what exactly was Moses saying? That the word saves is right here, as near as the tongue in your mouth, as close as the heart to your chest. It is the word of faith that welcomes God to go to work and set things right for us. That is the core of our preaching. Say the welcoming word to God, Jesus is my master, embracing body and soul, God's work of doing in us what he did in raising Jesus from the dead. That's it. You're not doing anything, you're simply calling out to God, trusting him to do it for you. That's salvation. With your whole being you embrace God, setting things right, and then you say it right out loud. God has set everything right before him and me. Still, this method of translating does not solve the translation problem, because the translator paraphrased the text. His ideas and values are naturally incorporated into the text. As such, it has received a lot of criticism from many Christians. The translation problem can never truly be solved, and we can expect to see many more versions of the Bible released as a result. Those interested in coming to an understanding of what the text truly means will continue to work with the original text in addition to its translated counterparts.